So my name is Patricia and I was diagnosed with ocular melanoma at the age of 28. I was never given a clear prognosis and I never got a stage for my tumor actually. But initially I was told at the first biopsy that the risk or the likelihood of the tumor to spread is very low. But that wasn't quite true. It did spread then 2 years later. But that was the only really sort of prognostic factors that I received. I was 28 and I'm 41 now. So it's 13 and a half years ago that I was diagnosed. So I was diagnosed in 2008, had a relapse in 2010. It spread extraocularly, so the tumor was outside of the eye as well. And then in 2012, it looked like there was tumor activity again. And that's when I had really had enough of doing the same thing over and over again and not getting the results that I was hoping for. So basically in 2012, then I decided to go without conventional treatment. I turned down Avastin injections. So that's an angiogenesis inhibitor. And probably what saved me was my son. I was still breastfeeding and I didn't deem it safe to continue. And that's when I went completely the metabolic route without any adjunct therapy. So I last had surgery and radiation therapy, proton beam in 2010. And then I didn't do anything else and I started with keto supplements, and it's literally just work in progress over the past, 9 years nearly that I have been following this path.
So it sounds like was it the second recurrence when you decided to change things up?
Yeah, I said to my consultant as well, look, what is the definition of insanity? Literally, it's not working. It's working for a year and then it seems to be taking off again. And so something is going on here, something else. I mean, it's one thing, it's brilliant to deal with the tumor with radiotherapy, but if you don't change the environment of the tumor, it's just, and I'm a really perfect case for that. It's going to keep coming back, and especially the eye, the retina, and a lot of cells in the eye are so they're really so dependent on glucose, and you don't have those safety mechanisms of insulin. It just literally, if your blood glucose goes up, those cells will be flooded with glucose as well. So there's no sort of, we should probably need to stop this and let's, just regulate this. So those cells work a little bit differently as well. And it's pretty, I think also as well, the mindset. And I say to my clients, initially I was in the boot of the car, in the trunk. I didn't know where I was going. I was scared. I actually didn't want to know where I was going. And then when my oncologist said, when he sent me home, I said, so what can I do? I mean, certainly I have to do something. What's my homework? And he said, don't worry, just go back home and go back to your old life. And I think that's when I moved from the boot to the back seat. And I started to be curious and I started to study nutrition. And I think when I had my first recurrence, then I started to really question my consultant. And I came with Tom Seyfried's book and his research and can I do this? And, I moved onto the passenger seat, but he still said, no. And then I kicked him out when I had another recurrence that started. And that's the sad thing as well. It's those mixed messages. I think they can be very disconcerting for patients. And that's why it's so important that they are all on board. And I mean, psychologically, I think it makes a huge impact that you don't have one consultant say, it won't make a difference. Just keep whatever, eating scones, ice cream, whatever. And stress doesn't have any impact, sleep, no. And then you have people like us who say, no, this is really important, and glucose control is really important. And then getting those mixed messages sometimes can be a stress in itself for the patient. If you're stubborn and if you have a certain mindset, I think that was my case as well. I'm the same. If someone tells me you can't do this, I'm sort of, I'm so going to prove you wrong.
Yeah.
Metabolic treatments basically saved my eyesight. I was told in 2010, because the optic nerve was also radiated, the tumor was so close, that I would lose my vision, and it came back. Actually, the optic nerve is working well. So that's one very positive aspect. The fact that I never had to go on Avastin is certainly very positive. And just the fact that I was on this 2-yearly loop of recurrences, and that I basically, my consultant was supportive and helped monitor the effects, and he also had absolutely nothing against me doing this. And he had seen that whatever we were doing, it wasn't working, and he saw sense in that. So that since then, with a few hiccups like hemorrhages in the eye, that was in 2016. Since then, it's just been very, very stable, touch wood. So yeah, a lot to be thankful for, definitely. So it worked out brilliantly for me. So yeah, I did these therapies alone, and so I have a little bit of a list. I took some notes what I have been doing. So I also incorporated, I never did off-label drugs because I just don't do very well on them for various different reasons, also my genetic variants. But I did take low-dose naltrexone. I did do melatonin. I still do melatonin. Supplements, rotation of supplements, different functional testing, and then adjusting the protocol. Heavy metals, I was really have had heavy exposure to metals, so I did initially DMSA, and now it's sauna therapy quite intensely. And I incorporated homeopathy, and very important, I think, the whole energy healing, energy medicine approach as well, that I actually started to train in that in 2018 as well. And I think it is so important to address emotions, to address not just the physical aspect, but the entire mental aspect as well, which for me was huge. I think they were triggers for me, and there were certain conditions that were there. I have a huge genetic predisposition to cancer as well. 3 of my grandparents died, reasonably young from cancer. And, working on sleep, really testing what works as well, not just guessing. And yeah, it's a quite a comprehensive list of different things that I did step by step in a very considerate manner.
Do you mind just telling us what you're doing with the sauna?
Yeah, so I've got a little bit of a protocol also with niacin. So, having quite a clear sequence in terms of taking the niacin, ideally combine it with a little bit of exercise before the sauna. I don't get to do this. I've got 2 kids, and it's just, I have a standing desk and I go for my walks, but I do my sauna. The only time is really in the evening, and it really improves my sleep. But I have to put the kids to bed. That's my exercise, I guess. So yeah, so basically then around 9:15 I go into the sauna, and that's when you dump then from the niacin, when you dump your toxins, and when free fatty acids go up. So it's about 3 hours later, and so the timing is really important, and then combining it with binders. So there's some mixtures of binders, quicksilver, they do a good one, or zeolite spray, activated charcoal. There's quite a lot of options there, but that's kind of important as well to have those binders to, when the toxins get released, that they leave the body and they don't get reabsorbed.
Yeah.
And just testing, does it work better in the morning or in the evening? But I test my sleep or track my sleep with the Aura Ring. I've had that for, I think I had one of the first Aura Rings in the world in 2016 or something.
Yeah.
And it really helped me dial in my sleep and what works and what interferes with my sleep. So that was really useful. So when I do the sauna, I just literally go straight into deep sleep, and I have more deep sleep as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just trying it out. But I find it brilliant. I just love it as well because it's so cold here at the moment. When I was first diagnosed, I went down the juicing. I did a lot of juicing. I went vegan. It didn't work for me. It may work for some people. For me, it was a disaster. The tumor actually ended up being larger the second time round than the first time round. It nearly disappeared after the first plaque radiotherapy session. And then in 2010, it was nearly 2 centimeters. It was a really large tumor. And so it did not work for me. I mean, with all due respect, for some people it may. That's why it is important when I look at my genetic variants now, I know why it's not working. And so unlearning in so many different aspects and completely changing my life. I changed my career. I changed almost everything. Radical change. In terms of financial costs, that's a bit different. Here in Ireland, it's you never know. It's basically our health service executive, a little bit like the NHS in the UK, that covers the cost. So I had plaque radiotherapy, which involved having 2 surgeries. And so it's also called brachytherapy. So, having 2 eye surgeries and the brachytherapy and being in hospital for a week, certainly pretty pricey. And then also the proton beam therapy is very high tech. And I know that's it's a very effective treatment for tumors, but it's I think it's not cheap. And then because I did a lot of I incorporated fasting, and generally also in terms of the food choices I made, supplements, I never went wild. I know some people spend a lot of money on them. You need to be strategic, but yeah, I mean, it's a fraction of the cost of what it would have been to do Avastin, for instance. I don't know how much Avastin is, so yeah. I'm such a strong believer in, our thoughts and how they affect our cells. And if you just constantly have that drive, you have a clear purpose, be that, your kids. I had my first diagnosis and then I got pregnant so quickly, we would never have thought it. I thought, it's going to take forever because my hormonal history is all over the shop as well. And then I just became pregnant really quickly. And so when my recurrence happened, it was literally, I was due to go back to work on the 3rd of June. And on the 2nd of June, I had my surgery and I called, sorry, can't come in tomorrow. And my daughter was 6 months old at the time. And so instead of summer holidays, we basically had, radiotherapy in the UK. So with my daughter, and I was still feeding her at the time as well.
Yeah.
So that was tough. And then my son, he was 8 months old when I started keto, and it was very interesting because it was just I said to my husband, "Are you starting to lose interest in breast milk? I think he's gonna, wean himself off." And then I went keto, and oh my God,
no,
he was just. I think he stopped eating almost, and all he wanted was milk.
Wow, that's a great story.
I just read a study to that effect, that when women eat a ketogenic diet, it passes along the ketones to the children and can fight autoimmune disease in the children.
milk is ketogenic anyway, because even in carb-loving moms, there's quite a lot of medium-chain triglycerides in breast milk, because the brain really needs that for fast growth.
Yeah.
But something must have changed otherwise as well. It just must have tasted a lot nicer, I'd say. So, and yeah, so he just kept going forever. I'm not a cow.
That's funny.
Very interesting, yeah, that he must have changed, yeah, the taste of the milk. And yeah, he was very little as well, and yeah, so that was. But then again, you know, we sometimes say it's this purpose, you know, when you have children, you're almost sending those constant to yourselves, to your genes, that, you know, I've got to stay here and I need to stay here. And so I think finding a purpose is so important.